Wow, Rob, can I have a copy of that?
Yeah.
Yes. It's like something. And this is pantyhose, is it covering the miners?
Yes.
Okay.
Cool.
I thought I'd start with something seasonal because we just went through Hanukkah and Christmas. So this is called Front Hall Pastoral Before Midnight Mass, 1955. He nixed her greetings with a half-closed fist, with a hand that might have been holding a crook fashioned for a tyke-sized grip, one of a restive allotment of shepherds in a short pants roll. He almost wished he'd been costumed, cast in a pageant, the better to handle an effusion of care from his cooing, lipstick-wearing sister, straightening his tie, brushing his coat, back from her air-shaft view apartment, sprung from her law librarian's cranny, who snorted as she whirled to find him half-turned, hunched, rubbing his cheek, knuckles directing the erasure of her kisses. So going back 13 years further, and I've heard some German tonight, so, to a different continent, but still in a cold time of year. This is called A Memo from Communications Division 6, Ray Soldering Garage B, Hofnagelplatz, 1942. Your Signal Corps is apologetic and claims that despite the shortage of beef, tobacco, and anesthetic to critical theaters, transport glitches must be laid at the feet of those who believed they were being prophetic, the talkers making the speeches, foreseeing quick advances. None had a lick of foresight, as any numbskull can attest, since it's come to our attention that boxcars leaving Berlin are too wide to fit the Soviet gauge. Rest assured, those of us who solder are hustling to install rapid crank-up interchangeable wheel systems. As for you, who sit there and smolder at the gates of Sebastopol, try, without losing your wits in shell fire, to butcher whatever's on the hoof. We'd understand if you rained hellfire on grouchy strategists with a master plan. If rail links hadn't been botched, you'd be home on furlough, every man an officer, it's true. Whereas now, it looks like none of us will be spared, as trains queue up for conversion with fewer of us on shift. All the same, we hope you haven't compared us to the talkers, as we equip more wagons with safe-lock double wheels, and drain a whole lot fewer flagons in commiseration with what surely must be a rock and a hard place for recruits such as yourselves, boiling rats and cabbage. We remain your best servants in the race. I was raised on all these World War II films, and they'd always have these German actors doing English and accented English, to pretend to give you the idea of who they were. As I guess some of us saw those films. So staying with the wintry scene here, this is called Snow Squall Field Notes. She buzzes me in our basement to tell me pileated woodpeckers are working the backyard pines, their passings by made manifest by her phone call from upstairs, where she sees our patio fading in whirling white fog, the birds turning into phantoms, though she does mention a stray exotic, which I might put binoculars to, but which I can't see, no matter how I crane my neck or perch on a chair, though I am grateful for her second-story courtesy, her solicitude for the bunkered. I think of her as a cruise guide for astigmatic retirees, as wind roars through the white pines, erasing tool shed and feeder, under tree-scent snow bombs that swirl down and blot out vision for all but my attic pal, dizzying in her praise of what goes on happening without me, as I clamber onto an upturned wastebasket, grumping again in my search for a stray junco, never mind the indigo bunting she claims is riding our hedge, feathers about to define blue. I'd be glad to see a nuthatch, I snap, my free hand dusting the plywood window ledge, her voice improving posture, pulling me upright, helping me connect with this havoc, till midday comes around, when we'll both use stairs to arrive at joint squall talk, the radio silenced in favor of lapidary moments of eloquence, equal to the socked-in backyard. And staying with the manuscript I'm working on has three things going through it, I guess. It has quirky domestic moments, fictional portraitures and poetry too, and elegy-like poems. So I'm just sort of taking one and then going back to another instead of staying with one type, one thread. Favor. Let me genuflect before our Kelvinator, and with a broom retrieve my daughter's doll's fiesta dress in the space allotted for silverfish, chewed fingernails, and those derelict tins of ant poison sent scudding across the tiles by slipper or cat's paw. Let me be at least as agile as last year and patient as a King Edward Street regular, panhandling the sweltering median below Rideau. Watch me lower myself to the mouse-high reliquary beneath the motor, and there, under coolant pipes, through the offices of my rag-wrapped broom end, may a doll's coat hanger emerge with its ruffled rayon frock intact, that the toe-tapping by my left ear and the imp wresting control of my daughter's face make way for a Mexican hat dance of gratitude. So I live right across the river in Gatineau, and there's a thing called René Lévesque Park, which is right across on the other side that I run through a few times a week, and it's got a gorgeous little swamp where herons show up and even bitterns occasionally in the summer. So this is called Gatineau Pastoral for a Gent Who Waits Table in the Rockies. A pale, long-necked veteran changing fishing grounds, circling from errand to errand. A frail-ribbed entry in a job lottery involving aerial side trips to known hot spots for frogs. Semi-hermetic, unabashedly in favor of staying put till December and being a stand-in coat of arms for anonymous outer city swamps. Maybe the same kind of bird as me, driving my 9-year-old daughter in her ballet finery home for a snack, with her prompted to look where I look, down a shared habitual sightline towards marsh shimmer, towards a gray smudge, which sometimes reminds me of John, my middle brother, in his rented trailer, frying eggs, while I and my daughter, who has never met him, and wouldn't know him walking down the street, or chalking specials on a menu board, neck check a line of bulrushes between subdivisions, to see if the standoffish tutorial giver in subsistence living, the slew's vice-rector of shortfall, the feathery uncle down there, friend of outrageous fortune, still grips his clay-bottomed preferment, weighing ice pellets against what can be gotten in slanting light. That's a long sentence, isn't it? So if you could follow the thread of that, good. So this follows off the back of that. It's a short poem. I've been into these a few times lately, these poems that hang out and then stepped tercets, 3-line tercets. I don't know why. Anyway, who knows? Nobody ever knows why.
The Holy Trinity.
A Trinity.
The Holy Trinity.
Yeah. But it's fun to work with different forms. This is called Entourage. Easier to see him handling bag after bag of flour at the restaurant bakery where he leans into hunks of sourdough than to imagine him going to his closet and taking a family photo out with the intent of examining it at the table in his third of a trailer, an hour's walk from work, and yet I like to imagine light touches my brother's tortoiseshell glasses in such a way as to illumine on certain nights a swatch of photographic paper under socks, which he then slides into partial sight and seizes, so that the images of the people in wide-angle attendance on its satiny finish find themselves staring up at him while a kettle whistles longer than it should, the faces countenanced again, or brought to a table for longer assessment in his double wide, surrounded by stars and poplars. I'll go back to Europe briefly. At the Carlton Tavern, Amanda Earle read a poem by Paul Vermeersch the other night, but she translated it into gibberish. And she spoke it so well. I know we can all speak gibberish, but she really sounded like an authority in the language. So in that spirit, this is called Professor Jacobson, Discourses on Another Aspect of His Made-Up Language. The words for today are broishni hydrenia. Saying them in your mind, you find you can either be compassionate or ruthless. It depends on tone. If you growl the Slavic-sounding phrase broishni hydrenia, several men will be bound and gagged and lowered into a freezing river. If you soften your voice, the locution will spare enemy officers and send them to a field hospital to recover in clean linen. This language where tone controls meaning, and meaning the lives of ex-occupiers, can it pull the dying from boxcars and reinstate them in a ghetto? Even as you storm the one bridge to this ruined plaza, your makeshift command post in the roofless opera, works of art were being carried away. But among these few captured enemy reservists, some are polyglots, and they will be pitching their ears to hear how words will exit your mouth. And my mouth is getting dry, so I'm going to just
take it up there.
Unitstragglers go native 9 AD. Hail and slingstones land where we were snoozing, and off we go in pursuit of the well-drained cave, whose porch is a temple for dressing ibex hides. The Teutoburgerwald claimed our vanguard, 10 ranks of 40 men shanked on low ground, in thick fog and drizzle, before we could set up catapults or cook stoves. Inferior reinforcements, our higher-ups would say, recruited from ragtag gladiatorial spectacles, riffraff, write them off. But south of the Rhine, we help save one clan from another and take pert-available widows who escort us through jaw-loosening gutturals, in full view of grandmothers gnawing leftovers and using bone needles to clothe us for winter as we seg from combustive intimacy to sleep. I was listening to the guy who won, he's a Toronto poet, and his name will come back to me, but he won the Griffin 2 years ago. Sure. Anyway, terrific poet. He had 2 initials at the front of his name. Thank you very much. I was listening to him read just down the way here, and so I really got into it that night and connected with something I've been working on. So this is called Solace. With cognition as its mahut, the mind, in its bone howdah, wishes the body would call it Honorable Sahib. But the body has another name in mind, not befitting mixed company. and waits till its flyweight rider has fallen asleep to pictures of itself in emperor's clothes, before body, in its own form of dreaming, imagines racing naked under a crescent moon with another kindred spirit, freed from similar bondage, who completes it, delights it, doubles its sense of itself as beautiful in its pachydermic heaviness under streetlights, till it can almost forget how much maligned it is by day. So I'll try something new out on you that I haven't workshopped, heaven forbid. How am I doing for time? Okay. The title doubles as the first line. The decorator crab plucks at one of two dish sponges at the back of a bubbling tea-colored tank and brings what she has prized loose forward with deck crane-like precision to a masticating fringe of filtering mouth parts, where gunk is applied to either the blue or the pink sponge hunk, before one of these bits of handy fluff is swung back and slapped on her carapace. Which reminds me that in some cases, an audience of small faces, craning close for a better view of this thwarted act of adaptation, will find a perverse charm in her hardwired urge to vanish as more and more of her body's varnish goes into resembling the centerpiece of a dockside dives buffet bar. Sounds like a little Kay Ryan there, leaning into the little rhymes in the interior of the poem. Okay, 4 more. Okay, this is a little longer. A midwife's late sabbatical. Say tilted fields run up shadowed valleys, farther than you can walk with an easel. Does it matter? You have a rented horse. A horse can graze for hours, while you, unpacking canvases and food, adjust your skewed optics to the washed air. Later you can return to your pension, whose shower runs on tokens, tense pour favors and treat you soon enough through doorways of notched stone, where instinct demands you deliver children, since doctors are on strike. Is risk a woman hiked up on a bed? She may be doing a marathon here. Your right hand takes her left wrist and gauges her fine galloping pulse. One good whack sets her son going. Then you're back out on the massif, recalling a wealth of obstetrical tips. It pleases you to ride from lavender to lichen as light touches tiled roofs. How did it take this long for insight to reach you? Were you asleep? Let the man hooked on new beginnings, who shrank from your night sweats, peel grapes for his child bride. Your daughters can survive without word from their painter mother till August. In the village where you are admired, where the Basque cafe owner refuses the euros you offer for a daily pastis, lemon trees are losing their blossoms. But you don't mind holding up here, not for this jumbled throw of terraced fields. Well, working through it. Linkage. Prodigal despoilers of tiles and linoleum, this pair. Tongues lolling out behind you on your shoe mat, waiting for call-up. Springer Spaniels? No. Cut-rate Kodiaks, worn through to their undersoles, which bleed a corrupt version of outer rubber. You'd want them to last forever, and street floors in every house you chance to visit, if their initial owner could somehow be resuscitated as you progressed, and you, his stepfather, could harp on the dumb luck which enabled you to happen by with a voodoo bag full of medical skills, untying his presumed to be inert body from the cold water pipe in his cellar, where later your ex his mother, would point to coat, gray felt hat, and boots, saying, "Go ahead, take something." Although I think his coat is spoken for. "Anything else you want? Boots? Yeah, I don't think that's odd at all. Take them." And you wore them loading airplanes, the tatter-prone laces accruing knots like an Incan tax collector's abacus. Now here they are beside your sandals, 6 years elapsed. You lower yourself to the maintenance of smudged tiles, willing to glower for as long as it takes, erasing in stocking feet the diary of foot travel, quarter turns and stops, the linkage from one day to the next, inked with the weight of your body over hallway slates and hearth bricks. You spit on a rag to save getting up, then duck walk over your calligraphy, whistling from scuff mark to scuff mark. Is one more okay, or 2 more? Great. Okay, this is a lot of fun. We don't get to do this often. Those of us who are...
We don't either.
Those of us who hang out in front of keyboards all the time. Okay, so I'll read 2 short ones. We have, I think, some rhymers here tonight. It's fun to read to them. The landlocked Selkie. She's eating out of a jar of whelks, hip braced against our fridge door. Upstairs is where she'll sleep it off, with earplugs to counter my snore. We're together in this pick-me-up end-of-day hunkering down to salt. Only she needs a periodic pit stop. Whelk flesh defines her by default. Let's hope we make the drive soon to a double cot in a dock shed, where she can strip, take 2 steps, and dive to the cold clam bed. Even cuttlefish do better than what awaits her each morning at 9. Recycled air, word counts to meet, not a whiff of salutary brine. Okay. So, cloud puffs above a ridgetop barbecue grill. And by the way, thanks, Rod, for organizing this, and Claudia, and Rona. It's a terrific job you do, and I appreciate it. Since it is not my custom to want less than the small bird working hard with her curved beak above our cedar deck to sate an appetite whetted by constant hunting, therefore, O shining dragon, that longs to soar over the white pines in rattling flight, your metallic sides further heating the air, disembowel a vulture for me, and from one of the conifers above my triangulated, codified, over-surveyed backyard, throw its bones onto my land as I toast another June day, saying to myself, I will live this solstice in the present. I will break it down into nanoseconds and savor each as the merlin hawk savors the goldfinch on a hemlock, plucking its yellow breast feathers aside before dining. Thanks a lot. You're a great audience.